Hello, friends. Long time no speak. Samantha and Zessie Kifle here. So we're excited to be returning to your airwaves soon with a brand new season of Masculinity. Today, though, we're lucky to be dropping a thoughtful and dope episode from a brand new documentary in our feed. And here with me to talk about it is audio producer and journalist Ida Hardin, who collaborated on this episode with the one and only RGP1, Remoy George Philip, the first. Ida, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Samantha. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. First, what's the name of the podcast that we're about to hear, and how did you get involved?
It's called Performing the Revolution, and I got involved with Remoy. He hit me up. He's like, "Hey, do you want to work on this crazy story about this theater company in India? Involves people trying to fight against something, trying to change something for the better." Yeah, he hit me up, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm game. Let's go."
I mean, in this episode is it's so great, and it brings out kind of like the best parts of the humanity, the activism, and the fight, right? Resistance is performance, resistance is joy, it's community, it's, art. And one thing that really stands out to me to your point is how like they're all coming together to fight for everyone. And for us, making a show about masculinity, men fighting for other genders is huge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 100%. We're constantly fighting a system that's trying to divide us, that's trying to take our power away from us. And it's just really important for us to cross different lines in different places and to come together because we're only helping them out by being divided. So, having a little theater group that's going out and informing other people, but also meeting with each other to have that space with each other to help everyone get along in this world, because this world is not a comfortable place to be.
Yes. I'm wondering for you, as someone who does tell these types of stories, even though this one is obviously really unique, like what was something that kind of stood out to you, something that you were surprised to find out?
I think I was really just surprised to see the power of behind Mala, one of the lead people in it, one of the lead people that runs this group still to this day, that's been doing it for, over 50 years, and just the endurance to keep going. And also just like how humble. She's a humble person, but she's also very strong. Like she will let you know straight up, like, don't ask me that question. That's a silly question. Like she just put you on your butt in a second. And just how much she's been through and how she goes through life. Like her take on life is really just a beautiful thing. Like I don't know if I can even explain it very well. I mean, you'll hear it in the episode, but she just wants people to be seen as equals.
Mm. But Mahler really kind of stands out, sort of like, I don't want to say necessarily secret hero, but definitely maybe subtle hero, in the group. And I'm wondering for you, why is it so important to tell this story? Like, especially at this time in our society.
I love working on stories that bring up issues that need to be addressed constantly. Like we constantly need to delve into these things and bring attention to them, because if they're not,
Yeah.
we'll have what's going on right now. Like it's just the inequality will spread. And so in the case, with Mala and Janam and all of that group, we see what's going on. We see the inequality. We see, we may come from a different class, a different place, but we see you and we're trying to stand with you. We're trying to help.
I wonder if there's anything that else that you're like, okay, folks, if there's nothing else that you take away from this episode, please take this away.
Yeah, resilience. I mean, I don't.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just, if anything, it's a resilience. You got to keep going, and I think that's just, if people can take away, is that you don't need to look for this big goal in life of like being a star or like a pro or you can find it just at your community center. You can find it with a group of people right in your community. they can be your people. I don't know. I think that that's really beautiful, and that's what's needed more, especially right now. People need to interact with each other. People need to get out, away from their phones, away from their computers, and go and play. I don't know, go play basketball. If you have to, go play with Remoy. He fouls like a mother, but
Yeah, please go play basketball at RGP1, who can be found at, a basketball park in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Probably right now, actually. Well, maybe a little late now, but tomorrow.
Possibly.
Yeah, he was just there this week.
I mean, I'm going in October. I'm going to give him a beat down then. So.
Oh, I'm so excited. I mean, I know we were talking about people staying away from the phones, but I need somebody to record this because I need to watch it.
Yes.
I'm not going to be there. I need someone to put that on tape. Okay.
Nice.
Because when you cross them, Ida, I need to see it for myself.
You got to love it too, because there's no gender inequality with him about how he plays defense. He will throw me on the ground. He has no wow. Yeah. No.
You need to Billie Jean King his ass. Okay?
Yes.
That's what you need to do. Yes. Yeah. You hear that, Remoy. You hear that, Remoy. Thank you for, stopping by and giving us some amazing context for this powerful, powerful story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm stoked that you all are going to start it back up again, because we need some masculinity right now. We need this. Yeah, and y'all do great work.
Thank you. Thank you for that compliment. Yeah. All right. So, audience, you heard it here first from the Ida Hardin, who came through and dropped some great knowledge for us about the episode that you're about to hear just now. And if you like what you hear today, you can listen to the rest of these episodes, right? How many are there in total, actually, Ida?
4.
4. So 4 episodes of Performing the Revolution.
Performing the Revolution.
And that is available in whatever app you call your podcast home. Be sure to subscribe. Thank you, Ida.
Yeah.
And without further ado, here it goes.
Okay, y'all. Here's a question I heard recently that I want to run by you.
How can a person be killed for doing a play? Just that very simple idea. How can you kill somebody for simply doing a play?
I'm Merope Peponides. I've been making theater practically my whole life, and as a young adult, came to New York to turn that passion into a career. Then I heard that question. How can a person be killed for doing a play? Honestly, it's reshaped the way I think about this work. But I almost never heard it, because there's a very real chance I never would have met the man who asked it. It all started in 2018. This was Trump's first term, and like so many people, I felt it. That gnawing urgency to use my skills in a real, tangible way to push back against right-wing authoritarianism. That's when I found myself in New Delhi, India.
We kind of opened the map up and just zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. And you could see this little bitty grid of streets.
This is my partner in life and work, Beto O'Byrne. Together, we run a theater company in the US called Radical Evolution. At this point, me and Beto had spent nearly 10 days traveling across India, visiting family, catching up with friends, also casually looking for different theater traditions in the region, seeing what we could learn about what our fellow artists were up to halfway across the world. Then, out of nowhere, we got a last-minute email. A simple instruction. Go to a bookstore, not in a touristy part of Delhi, and there's someone you need to meet. So me and Beto got in the first taxi we could find. The car pulled up to a part of town where the roads turned into a maze of narrow streets. The driver told us that's as far as he can go. As we stepped out of the car, the sensory overload of a busy Delhi neighborhood engulfed us.
I was pretty timid to walk through because it was so clearly we were not of the place.
In that moment, turning around never occurred to me as an option.
She was just plowing down the street, and I was having to keep up with her. She was having no fear.
We walked down a dusty, narrow street filled with bikes, mopeds, and tangled electrical wires above our heads. And then we saw it. A bright red sign that read Mayday Bookstore. Workers' rights slogans were painted all across the front. One read, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for books and coffee. I could get on board with that. We pulled open the wooden door.
The inside was just like packed with books, very lived in space. There was a lot of just like posters of like the history of the like political left in India.
And there, in a cozy nook, was a silver-haired uncle like I'd seen in many family photo albums. But this one, standing in a t-shirt and jeans, looked like a seasoned revolutionary. His name is Sudhanva Deshpande, Sudu for short.
I'm an actor, director, organizer, and I've also been writing non-fiction for the history of street theatre in India.
Sudu's deep understanding of theater was clear from the start. He told us about how India's political theater had roots in the fight against British colonialism. One specific historical company Sudu would go on to tell us about was one he'd actually been a part of for almost 40 years. Jananatya Manch, or Janam, a street theater company that's been at the forefront of activism in India.
Jananatya Manch translates to People's Theatre Movement.
Janam's goal was always to entertain. But even more important, their work aspired to put front and center the struggles of the working class and to shine a light on the larger social and political systems that created those daily challenges. This ragtag group of volunteers, hailing from different classes and backgrounds, would perform these raw, roughly 20-minute absurd satires. And they did it all on street corners, in marketplaces, at factory gates, places where their work would directly connect and mobilize workers most affected by predatory, abusive business owners. But this provocative work would inevitably come at a cost.
The killing of Safdar Hashmi, that happens on the 1st of January. He dies on the 2nd.
Safdar Hashmi was one of the original founders of Janam. And on New Year's Day in 1989, he was the one fatally attacked during a performance. But Safdar wasn't just a leader. He was a brother-like figure to Sudu. That's why when Sudu asked, how can a person be killed for doing a play? You can hear so much pain and frustration in his voice. Yet, even through that grief, Sudu has a reason for why this violent retaliation happened. His words are direct and clear.
Jananatya Manch was attacked because we were there. That really is the one thing that is the core of what we do. That we are there. Where struggles are happening, we are there.
Listening to Sudu, hearing about everything he's experienced, witnessed, and how he and Janam still show up for the workers, it's nothing short of incredible. But I still had real questions. How does one keep making radical work like that for this long, especially enduring all that they've faced? Or maybe, who really is fueling the drive to keep going? And how could Beto and I take a page from Sudu and Janam's playbook and bring this type of work to the States? There was so much more we had to learn, and this was just the beginning. Welcome to Performing the Revolution. Join me over 4 episodes where I discover how artists around the globe are using their craft to fight for political change. I'm Merope Peponides. In this first episode, we're diving into Janam's 50-year legacy through the voices of those still bringing its mission to life today. We'll explore what it means to be a young, idealistic artist stepping into this work, and what it takes to keep going when the fight gets personal. How do you face unimaginable loss, push through tragedy, and still come out on the other side, ready to stand up for others? Janam's legacy isn't just history. It's a strategy for resistance. And for Beto and me, it's a strategy we had to better understand, so we could try to bring it to the US. And we'll pull back the curtain on how it all started right after this break.
Hey guys, this is Remoy Philip, one of the executive producers alongside Merope for this show. Don't worry, I'm not here to get you to sign up for Squarespace. I'm not trying to get you onto a Casper mattress. All I want to do is say thank you. It may seem insignificant, but you clicking play means the world to me and our team. When we first started orbiting these stories about 2 years ago, we were pretty sure we had something special. But now, for you to be here listening to the culmination of all that time, work, and creativity, it's no BS. We're truly honored that you're down to ride with us and these stories. So take that with you as you continue to listen, and I'll be back a little later in the episode to share a bit more about how you can help us push these underreported stories further out into the world. So, until then, let's get back into it.
Before Sudu joined this historic theater movement, he was just one of those theater kids that Beto and I have definitely met before.
I wanted to be an actor, like a serious actor, and I wanted to be a star.
It was the mid-'80s. Sudu, on the verge of adulthood, hanging out at the local university where his father taught and sister attended. It was there that Sudu would often run into that leftist theater group.
This university has a very strong left students movement. And so the students would often invite Janam to come and perform. My sister is also a singer that would often pair up with Janam, and I had watched their performances.
Sudu grew up in a progressive home. His father even taught at the university. But like most teens, Sudu wasn't interested in anything like that.
I was like, oh, the street theater is not for me. That's for activists.
In 1987, Sudu's feelings would change. He took on a small role after some convincing from the co-founder, Safdar Hashmi. And soon after, Sudu and Safdar found themselves getting all intellectual, like people of a certain age do.
I would get into huge arguments about art, theater, politics, about history. He was just so much fun. He was a fantastic conversationalist.
Safdar's intellect, kindness, and humor won Sudu over. And let's just say, Safdar also had style.
Safdar, apart from everything else, he was a good-looking dude. He was tall, he was handsome, he had a beautiful voice, and he was super charming. Super, super charming.
As time passed, Sudu took larger roles and started helping write scripts. But there was one pretty crucial thing holding him back.
At that time, I stammered a hell of a lot. I couldn't get a single sentence out straight.
He would memorize his lines, yes, a common practice for actors, but also a helpful technique for people who stammer. And performance after performance, Sudu's confidence grew. Then came a couple of life-changing performances where Safdar helped Sudu directly overcome that stammer he'd struggled with since early childhood. One was where Safdar challenged Sudu to give an impromptu speech before a show. This is their typical pre-performance setup, to grab the attention of the nearby pedestrians and onlookers. A speech that Safdar usually gave.
One day he's like, I'm tired of speaking before the shows and like, you have to speak. I said, come on, Safdar, I stammer so much, how can I speak? He's like, no, you have to speak. My heart pounding away. I was super nervous, super nervous. And I was staring at him, daggers in my eyes, like, where have you got me?
But Sudu had no other choice. He gave that speech.
It was a huge thing for me to stand up in front of workers and speak. Was just so exhilarating.
The second moment came when Sudu was suddenly thrown on stage to play a cop, a role he knew inside out. But Safdar was unsure about Sudu playing that role. Then the show ended and...
Safdar, tall, strapping, he ran to me and hugged me and lifted me up. In Hindi he said, "Oye lale di jaan, tune to kamal kar diya, dhoti ka phad ke rumal kar diya." Which is a phrase that's basically, man, you killed it.
Sudu didn't want the feeling to pass. He could see his creativity flourishing with Janam under the guidance of Safdar.
I was like his little tail, like a little puppy dog behind him. Whatever he was doing, it didn't matter.
But it so happened that he did go to the same places where Safdar and I went. He was, of course, completely bowled over by Safdar. That's a fact.
This is Molayashri Hashmi, or Mala for short. Safdar's partner, who had a front row seat to Sudu and Safdar's growing brotherhood.
He also met Safdar at other places where I didn't go because I was teaching during the day.
Mala grew up in a very progressive home in Delhi. Her father was a part of a local trade union. And in the early 1970s, as a college student, she became involved with local activism through theater.
I had met Safdar in 72 in IPTA, the Indian People's Theatre Association, which was a large umbrella-like organization, a conglomeration of different kinds of performers, artists, intellectuals, creative people who were part of this kind of a pan-India organization.
Political theater has had a long history in India, and the Indian People's Theatre Association, known as IPTA, was a part of the movement that abolished British colonial rule. It was through IPTA that a group of young theater people conceived of Janam. They wanted to make theater relevant to workers, to tell stories that roused people to advocate for their rights. But just a few short years into Janam's early work, India's creative community experienced a huge crackdown.
We had the emergency in 75 when virtually everything shut down.
For 2 years, from 1975 till 1977, India experienced a period that came to be known as the emergency. The government, under Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, censored virtually all forms of political and artistic expression. Even newspapers would black out some of their more offensive writing. This repressive period forced Janam to pause their work.
There was a lot of tension and terror. A lot of student activists had been arrested. My father, for many months, wasn't home. He was staying somewhere else because the police used to come to the house often because my father was in the trade union.
2 years later, the repressive legislation was lifted. Janam resumed. But now they didn't have access to the same resources as before to put on large-scale performances. So, Safdar came up with a new plan for the group.
Safdar actually said this very succinctly and simply, that if we can't take big theatre to the people, let's take small theatre. That was a decision that I think was a turning point.
It was at that moment that street theater came to life. Short, gritty, agit-prop performances that brought the issues right to the doorsteps of factories and to the center of working-class neighborhoods. Janam was speaking truths directly to workers, dodging the censorship of mass media. This can be seen in one of Janam's plays from 1978 called Machine. It documents the struggle that factory workers faced every day.
There was this one incident, humanitarian issues of having a place to just heat their lunch and maybe have a cup of tea, and a place to park their bicycles so that the trucks wouldn't knock them over.
Safdar and Janam desperately wanted to understand what was at the heart of these sensitive issues before ever conceiving of a play. So,
we talked to workers at great length, to the union leaders, and tried to understand what was happening. So they knew what a factory meant and what were the relationships in a factory. And that triggered the idea of a machine. And what happens to the machine when it stops?
I've watched this play dozens of times, mostly in Hindi. Yet, even with the language barrier, the message is unmistakable. Each actor embodies a cog in the machine. Workers, security guards, managers, the factory owner, bringing the entire capitalist system to life right before our eyes. And when the workers step out of that machine, it immediately stops. It can't function without them. It's exacting, hilarious, and almost uncomfortably relatable. This was the Janam that Sudu came to discover in the 1980s. A group of mainly middle-class professionals that dedicated their free time listening and creating art to support the workers' movement. By this point, Janam had a strong core group, just as the workers' rights movement in Delhi was at its tipping point. Over 3 years, strikes started to unite millions of workers. In 1986, Delhi ground to a halt. A wave of one-day cross-industry strikes swept the city. The working class had stopped. The people who made their city come to life said no more. By 1987, the movement was only growing stronger.
We found that in some places where we went to perform, some of the slogans that we had coined for the play, the workers already knew those slogans. And they were using those slogans in their campaign. So clearly the play had kind of become a thing that they owned.
Making for one of the biggest moments in Delhi's history.
There were 1.3 million workers who went on strike for 7 days. It's the largest working class mobilization in the history of Delhi.
The theater Janam was creating became this beacon for the working class. They were performing stories that roused people to advocate for their needs. Things like access to bathrooms and other facilities in their workplace, time for actual breaks, and better overall working conditions. Janam was a part of a movement to disrupt, which also made them a target. Stay tuned.
Okay, so the reason you're not hearing me do an ad read for ZipRecruiter is because for all that you've heard so far, does that sound on brand? Look, we're an indie show. That means we need you, our listeners, to be that propulsive force to get these not often heard stories out into our world. So if you haven't already, hit the follow or subscribe button. Tap share on your phone and send this podcast to all of your people. Leave us a review even. Truly, that level of support not only means the world to us and the people in these stories, but it'll honestly help get this message to more people who could benefit from them. Thank you again. Now back to Performing the Revolution.
Welcome back. Before the break, the young theater company Jannat-e Manch had begun to hit their stride. They had just helped lead multiple strikes, rallying millions of workers across the city with their funny, provocative, and effective performances. That's where we left it, right after the most successful strike in 1988. But on New Year's Day, 1989, everything for the company changed. It was a bright, brisk morning in Delhi. Mala was standing at a bus stop, holding a large bag of props, waiting patiently for the other performers to trickle in. They had agreed to meet at 11 a.m. to travel together to Jandapur, the working class area situated right between two massive factories. Safdar waited with Mala, wearing a brand new green sweater.
A beautifully knitted sweater, which my mother had knit for him.
All the others were late, but eventually they trickled in. Some, including Sudu, a little more haggard than others from the New Year's Eve festivities.
A couple of us may have been hungover a little bit.
Once they arrived at the location on the narrow street for the performance, they quickly set up. Sudu began to give an impromptu speech to rally the crowd. After, Sudu and Safdar stood to the side sipping tea from a local vendor. Neither of them were acting that day. The play, called Halla Bol, began, and people were laughing.
This whole thing was done in a kind of a over-the-top, sort of Hindi film, Bollywood type of way.
It's a typical Janam play, a satire that combines a love story and protest against police harassment.
The play begins with these workers who are sort of in a procession, holding their flags and shouting slogans, and the cop comes and says, no, your play is about the strike and that's not allowed. And they say, okay, fine, we'll do a love story for you. Then of course the love story also inevitably goes towards the issue of the strike. Then the cop interrupts that again and says, you can't do this. What if we do a play against the strike? The cop is like, wow, that'll be fantastic if you can do a play against the strike. I'll get promoted. My superiors will be so happy. And of course, the play against the strike also turns into a play for the strike.
Mala was in the back, acting the role of a tree, swaying back and forth.
I was just one of the trees. There's a song there, this funny song, this parody.
Suddenly, she could hear something happening over where Sudu and Safdar were standing. A large political procession was trying to cut through the crowd gathered for the play. These were common during election season. They stopped the play, and Safdar walked up to one of the cars.
There was a car in the front that was leading the procession. And there was a group of people sitting in the car, and they came and started honking. So Safdar got up and went to the car and explained to them that we are doing a play, and why don't you take another route right now and then come back here? You know, the play will be over in like 10 minutes. And so they said, okay, fine. And they turned around. They started going back.
Where Safdar was standing, he signaled to me that you start. So I told our drummer. He quickly played the drum and we started the song again.
The play resumed. Mala began to sway. But then, from out of nowhere, men started aggressively rushing through the audience.
That's when the actual attack came. They had iron rods and sticks.
A vicious armed mob tore through the audience, hunting for the actors.
There was a complete melee. The local people, they just completely ran away. It was very chaotic and everybody was going to here and there.
Mala, who feared for the safety of the two women in the group, quickly gathered them up. Rape was prevalent in these kinds of situations, and there was no accountability for this kind of gendered violence. The three of them ran into a small ironing shop and closed the door. Through the window, she could see the attackers beating innocent people.
One of our trade union comrades was hit very badly. Somebody picked up a bench and pushed the comrade down and banged his knees.
She could see Safdar yelling and waving for the group to run to the union office nearby for safety.
Safdar said, come to the office, which was really, really very close by, but not a straight walk. And as he was saying this, he moved his head and his glasses fell, and somebody came and stamped on the glasses.
Sudu, still in the area where the group had been performing, but now separated from Mala, found himself caught in the crosshairs.
At that point, just adrenaline takes over rather than thought. And we picked up stones and started throwing them to kind of keep them a little bit at bay. But we knew that we had to run away from there. We were not going to stand there and try to fight them. These were heavily armed goons.
Seemingly the muscle of the nearby factory owners. After briefly trying to ward off the attackers, Sudu scattered the other direction with two other men. They escaped into the neighborhood and tried to blend in.
We wear these black, what's called a kurta. I gave my jacket to this other guy and said, take off your kurta. The idea was to try and blend into the crowd a little bit, to not stand out as actors. And that was difficult for us because our bodies, our class, our faces, everything makes us stand out in a working class neighborhood.
Meanwhile, Mala and the two women left the ironing shop and fled to the union office with Safdar and the rest of the actors. One of the performers was injured. He had a gash in his head from being bludgeoned and was bleeding. Worse, the gate in front of the small union office couldn't be locked. There were dozens of armed men heading to the gate. Safdar knew they would force their way in before too long. He told the actors to leave, to find safety somewhere else, jump the back wall and get out of there.
The walls of those houses were really low. 4 of us jumped the wall.
That left just Safdar and one other actor to hold off the mob.
Safdar and Brijendra held on to the door, and then Safdar told Brijendra, you go and try and go to the police station.
Mala and the other actors took off their black kurtas to blend in and searched for a place to hide.
The 4 of us, I tried to go into somebody's house, but nobody would open the door. Then a little further down the lane, there was one house, the door was open. I just went inside and bolted it from inside. And I said, just keep quiet and stand in the corner. Don't make a noise, don't breathe.
They hid in the locked room in silence. Hours passed. They listened and heard occasional gunshots. The only light came through a barred window, high up on the wall. Meanwhile, Sudu and the other 2 actors were still in the narrow streets trying to blend in. The neighborhood had emptied out. People were shuttered in their houses out of fear, leaving the actors exposed.
The whole neighborhood had shut down, all the shops had shut down. There was a kind of an eerie kind of silence all over.
They made their way down the street, keeping a distance from one another and staying close to building walls. Until Sudu noticed one of the actors in front of him turn the corner and take off in a sprint.
He started running in the direction in which we had been performing. And so I was like, is he nuts? The attackers would be there still. And then I ran behind him, turned the corner and looked at where he was running and realized that there was somebody prone on the ground at that time. I saw the green color and I said, oh shit, that's Safdar.
Sudu stood in disbelief. His mentor and friend lay motionless on the ground. Fluid oozed from his nose. One of the actors, a doctor, cleared Safdar's airway, and all 3 of them picked him up.
I had held him at the ankles. We were carrying him and my hands were slipping. He was a big guy. He was heavy. Then we were joined by a worker who saw us struggling. He just came and lifted Safdar up wordlessly, helped us get out of the way of the attackers.
Mala, only blocks away from Safdar, stayed hidden inside the locked house with her fellow actors, listening as the dangerous men passed, as they shouted warnings to the people of the neighborhood about the consequences of hiding the performers.
Where are those people from Delhi, those people wearing black kurtas? Where are the women wearing black kurtas? Whoever has them will teach you a lesson.
As the last light of the short winter day sank past the window, Mala finally heard a voice she knew.
And I recognized it. He was a leader of the teachers' movement, and he was also a teacher in a university, and he had come looking for us. We opened the door, and you should have seen the relief on his face. He was so scared for us. He bundled us into a car. So I asked him, where is everybody and where is Safdar? He said, don't worry. Safdar is in the hospital. Don't worry. When somebody says don't worry, that means you worry.
Once in the car, on the way to the hospital, she realized that her husband, comrade and fellow actor, Safdar, might be extremely hurt. At the hospital, Mala found out Safdar was in critical care and on life support.
I was told that he has been put on the ventilator. I said, okay, that is not a good sign. The neurologist, he was very clear. When there's too much of a bleed inside, there's no surgery, and the prognosis is very poor.
The day turned to night as fellow artists, actors, journalists, family, and politicians filled the hospital. Around that time, news started to trickle in about how a factory worker had been killed.
The assailants shot dead Ram Bahadur, a factory worker who was among the hundreds watching the play.
Mala floated in and out, listening and asking the doctors not to sugarcoat the reality of his situation.
On the 1st of January 1989, Safdar Hashmi, writer, poet, artist and cultural activist, was fatally attacked. Safdar died in hospital the next day of grievous head injuries. He was 34.
He had not sustained a single injury in the rest of his body. It was only his head. In a kind of a diabolic way, it's kind of symbolic. It's the head that they were targeting. It's his creativity, his ideas.
On the morning of January 3rd, thousands of people marched for Safdar's funeral procession. Mala watched as people from every class of Delhi came to pay tribute.
It was amazing the number of people who had come.
Safdar had become a living symbol of the struggle for artistic freedom and tolerance, of the fight against tyranny and oppression.
And these were not people who were with the trade union or with the left movement or political people. They were also ordinary people on the road who joined.
By this point, the haze of the past 48 hours caught up with Sudhu. He stood at the funeral with the other actors, watching Mala, trying to imagine the amount of grief she must be feeling.
She stood there, not a teardrop in her eyes. She looked us in the eye and said, we have to go back there tomorrow morning and perform.
Back to the spot where they were attacked while performing the play, and finish it. I can't even imagine, days after such violent tragedy, returning back to that same spot and performing a play full of satire and humor, bringing everyone who witnessed it along. Not next week or next month, but the very next day after cremating your partner and beloved comrade. It was clear that this was not just about a performance anymore. It was an assertion of their rights. It was bravery in the face of repression. Later that same night, after mourning Safdar's death with comrades, Sudhu went home for the first time since the New Year's Day performance. He felt numb. He took a bath.
I was taking off my clothes, and that's when I realized that I had Safdar's blood on my sweater and my jacket. So I took off my jacket, my sweater, and had a bath and ate warm food for the first time in 3 days, and just got into bed and cried.
The next morning, Janam arrived at the same spot where they had run for their lives 4 days earlier. They stood to perform the same play where their friend was brutally murdered, doing their best to bring energy and humor to a satirical play while still reeling from the trauma.
Nobody was laughing, nobody was smiling, nobody was grinning. Everyone was grim. And there's this one moment where we all come together in a huddle. And I remember Mala looked at all of us with daggers in her eyes and said,
If your play is going to suffer, that means the killers have won.
She whispered this to all of us. And then she turned around and twirled her body and sang the song. And everybody started singing, and just something changed. It was the most amazing transformation I have ever seen in my whole life. And I remember her voice. It just was silk, but it was also iron. It was incredible. That moment is etched in my memory, and I'll never forget it till the day I die.
Back in the bookstore, sitting with Sudhu, I had goosebumps thinking of the power of this moment. Listening to their story made all those images on the walls real. I could see myself becoming a part of that movement. This determination, this conviction of Mala's, to some degree, that's what continues to drive Janam to this day.
Some people dropped out, but some of us stayed on, and we just stayed on. And I think for me personally, part of it was for Safdar, And a huge part of it was for Mala. Such a rock. Just the most incredible pillar of strength and inspiration. Just so amazing.
If you ask any of the hundreds of different volunteers and performers who have joined Janam over the decades, many would say Mala is the engine that keeps them going. She arranges most of the group's performances, constantly calling union members, women's groups, student activists, and others to get Janam's work out into the world. She makes sure the group meets daily. After everyone gets out of their day job, they travel through the bustling streets of Delhi, some for over an hour, to plan, rehearse, and perform, putting on somewhere around 200 performances a year. This level of dedication still astounds me, especially considering what Mala's had to endure. Hearing this from Mala and Janam's larger story, it's completely shifted what I thought was possible to do with theater. But still, me and Beto were left with some final questions. How should we approach making this type of theater in the States? So we asked her. Now, fair warning, when Mala sees a mic, let's just say her contrarianism can take the stage.
Amazing. So I know we've been talking for a while, but I just kind of have a final roundup of a question.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess, like, in the current political context that we are dealing with in the U.S., I'm curious what advice you have for people attempting to make political theater in the U.S.
Who am I to advise anybody in the US what they will do in their country?
No.
And therefore, neither should the Americans advise us.
Well, certainly.
No, you can. You're a friend. So that's different. I think it does require a certain amount of, selflessness is too big a word, but less selfishness. People should figure out what's happening in their country and maybe have more guts.
I have one question, and I am curious, what is your hope or dream for Janam as it moves forward?
I think of, say, 25 years into the future. Mm-hmm. I hope that the winds of real change would be blowing, not just in this country, but elsewhere. That all the movements that are happening at various places, movements against all kinds of injustices, would actually grow enough to actually result in something more permanent.
After all the time we've spent with Mala and Sudhu, learning about everything Janam has built over the past 50 years, I can't help but feel compelled to be a part of that change, carrying forward the legacy of all they've strived for, of what's been accomplished. Because this machine we're currently up against, that seems to be closing in with its mix of absurdity and impunity, causing real harm and destruction, I can't just sit back and watch. It's time for us to act. Now, our story is far from over. For the next 5 years, our connection with Janam would deepen as we would work to bring them here to the States. And along the way, I would start to see how they were the direct link to other stories of performers using their work to fight back. Like in Palestine.
On Wednesday, Israeli soldiers raided the Freedom Theater in Jenin, a renowned cultural institution whose mission is to fight for Palestinian justice, equality, and self-determination.
And even the industrial farmlands of Northern California.
Then he reaches into his glove compartment and pulls out a gun. And then he puts it to my head. And he says, "All right, act." I'm doing theater on the picket line. Is it worth dying for?
All of it culminating in Janam coming to New York to collaborate with us in developing a show together.
Hello, how are you? Oh my gosh, hi.
How are you?
Welcome. Hello.
Welcome. My goodness.
Oh my God, finally.
Here, it's happening. Wow. Performing the Revolution is an original series created by Radical Evolution and Bad Cooley Productions. This episode was reported and produced by Ida Hardin. The rest of our reporting team are producers Flora Quitman and Navani Otero. This episode was edited by Remoy Philip, initial editorial support by Liz Mack, fact-checking by Will Barlow, sound design and mixing by Remoy Philip. Original music by Young Elephant and Chris Rapolo. Our theme song, Dolomite, is a Sunny Jane original. Show art by Manuel Miranda. The executive producer at Radical Evolution is me, Merope Peponides. The executive producer from Bad Cooley is Remoy Philip. The archival clips you heard throughout this episode were from the documentary Safdar by Sashi Kumar, provided by our favorite weathered revolutionary, Sudhanva Deshpande. Special thanks to Emily Harris, Zach Stewart Pontier, Stephen Underhill, and to Sanya Hashmi, Komita Danda, Shayoni Mitra, Sharudeep Roy, Priyanka, and Raymond Rodriguez. To the Network of Ensemble Theaters for the travel grant. Did you love our first episode? All the true-to-life theatrics and intrigue? If you did, make sure you subscribe to the series in whatever app you call your podcast home. We'll have another incredible story in your feed soon. Thank you for honoring this story with your time. I hope you can take something from it to shape our world. It's been a pleasure to share it with you.
And if early morning India time suits you, I'll wake up since I don't have to look pretty in the morning, since this is only a podcast.